And we used to know about him, from the news of the jihad. And we used to hear about him from the deeds that people said about him, and from the cassettes, and from the magazines, and from the books. He was an international recognized figure. And we used to hear about him, we used to hear about him from the brothers. And also he was somebody who did not love the dunya. He did not love the pleasures of this dunya. And he did not like to and he was not pleased with except with the easy things and the things that were essential. Ashay al-dururi. From the things that are pleasurable. And she says that he was a person that had divorced the dunya, and he would have thrown it behind his back, even regarding presents. Okay? Even if these presents were expensive or simple. For he used to say to me that, it's better that we give these presents out themselves as presents. Because anything that is extra, and it's not from the things that are essential, he said we don't need it. We only need essential things. He would maintain this zuhud. And you can see why from statement like this, why the brother said to you earlier, the call I made earlier, that he had the zuhud of Ibn al-Mubarak. And he was someone who hated ghiba. He knew that ghiba, backbiting, would destroy the Muslim community. And he's got cassettes and videos on this. And he would hate anybody coming to him with bad sayings about any of the people. Okay? And even if these things were true, he would hate to hear about it, really. And this is what ghiba is, in fact. And she continues to say that he was not a person who would talk, that I heard him saying evil things about people, but rather, if someone said evil thing about it, he would defend them, and he would give them excuses. And he was somebody who would love people to, he would love to joke sometimes, but he would only like people to joke with jokes that were truthful. And she says that he used to give tarbiyah to the children, and this is an important lesson for our children as well, inshallah. With good manners and guarding of the tongue. And he would say to them, for example, he would say to his children sometimes that if they were quiet for 1 hour and didn't say anything, that I will give you 100 rupees. So for 1 hour, you're quiet, you contemplate, I'll give you 100 rupees. And he would say to them sometime that he would say to them that increase the agriculture, increase the fruits for you in Jannah by saying Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi Subhanallahi al-Azim. This is what he would say to children. Increase your trees in paradise. Increase it now. And he would say to them that that if they were to memorize a page from the Quran, he would give them 50 rupees. So he's always encouraging them. And she says that he would do this so that he would encourage them, and therefore to encourage them so that they do not waste their time with anything except for things that were beneficial. So we find here, right, a sheikh who not only on the outward is he a person true to his word, but on the inward, from his family, from his wife, she's saying this, that he's a man who's true to his word. And then in 1989, which is the last year of the sheikh himself, and in this year, the Russians, it's becoming quite clear that they were being expelled, they were being defeated. Despite that, the enemies of the Muslims, they still had other enemies as well, from communists that were within Pakistan, within Peshawar, within Afghanistan itself, not from the Russians themselves. They had other enemies from the West, and it was clear that the enemies, they were lurking in the behind the scenes. And in November '99, the first attempt they made upon him was that they placed TNT explosives underneath the pulpit from which he was about to give khutbah. And this was such a large amount that had it exploded, it would destroy the whole mosque. This is how his ruthless his enemies were. And just before that, the last lecture he gave, that's recorded, was the one in November 8, 1989, and he gave this in Lahore. And I thought, inshallah, we'd quickly just cover some of the main points, because these were the main points that he was telling the Muslims before he was assassinated, inshallah. He was shaheed. The first thing he says in this quote, I mean, this is entitled "Mada Turidun," what do you want? But the first thing I'll only mention the main points that we can learn from this lecture. But the first thing he says is he starts by praising Allah, giving peace and blessings upon His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then he quotes the verse, and fight them until there is no fitna, and the religion itself is all for Allah. And then he says, the first thing he says is that, the first priority from the Muslims is that they must prioritize the Islamic work. You must prioritize your Islamic work. Without that, you will achieve nothing. The second lesson that he says, I'm only coming to the main points. He says, is that really there will be no tawheed. There will be no real worship of Allah without the Muslims having a land that they can defend, and they can propagate Islam properly, and that people who are attacked for their religion, they can come towards. You will never have tawheed in the world. You will never really establish the religion. And he also says that really you will only achieve this land. There's only one way to achieve the land, and that's the way the Prophet ﷺ achieved this. In the fact that he migrated to Medina, he established the land there himself. Just like that, when the opening comes, like it was coming there, Afghanistan was that opening. Just the way the Prophet ﷺ had opening Medina, you go there and you start working there. And just as Prophet ﷺ, he had a lot of problems there in the beginning, so do we. This is our land. And the third point he said was that the biggest miracle that the Muslims have had in the last 3 centuries is that is the defeat of the kuffar, because the Muslims for a long time they have been unable to defeat the kuffar, and for that reason they become humiliated again and again and again. And he would often say that the Muslims the people who don't make jihad, they are not a people. And then the fourth thing he said in this lecture was that he starts to quote the West in the fact that what a big thing that the West they're trying to say that it was we are the ones who defeated the Russians. But he says no, it was we who did it, not them. Don't let them confuse the matter. It's we did it out of our own money, we fought them ourselves, it's us who did it. So he was a man who used to read what the West was saying. And he then said what the role of the Muslim, what the role of the Western media is towards jihad and the Muslims generally. And he said there were 3 points. He said that the first point was to make the jihad, go from something that's global to something that's local. This is just a local war. This is the first thing that Western media are trying to do. Second thing he said was that they were trying to wipe away, the jihad from the people. They're trying to say that this is a local thing. This is a local internal fight, nothing to do with jihad. And the third thing they're trying to do is via these confusions, they're trying to make people stop. They're trying to stop people from coming to the jihad itself. So he was very switched on to what was going on in the world, what the Western media are trying to do, and he would warn the people towards this. And the fifth thing he says is that what now do the Muslims want? We have so many. We have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us such a huge blessing here in Afghanistan. It's now for the Muslims to just take it. We have weapons. We have people who care. We have the leaders who care for Islam. We have the land. Now it's just for us to take it. The next point he covers quickly is that that indeed there will be no more opportunities like this for a long time to come if you don't take it. If the Muslims don't take this opportunity, when will they take the opportunity? When will they take the chance? They don't seize this chance. And then he talks about the situation, what's happening, which is not something I'm going to go into right now. But then he again mentions the point that the time is right, the time is now. And it's always, if you look at Islamic history, it's the few. And he'd always mention this, it's the few people, it's always the few people who start something. So if you join the few, this is where the blessing is. And he also would say that, and the next point he mentioned was that the results that will happen with jihad in every single front will never happen with any other work. The way the amount we can achieve with jihad, and the amount we've achieved with jihad, and for example, he says in the last 10 years, even in 20 years, if you do it via other means, right, via democracy, try to gain Islam, right, that type of thing, you'll never achieve it. And he basically is saying that a lot of Muslim groups they think of different ways to try to achieve the Islamic State. This is all is playing games. You'll never achieve it like you'll achieve it this way. Then he mentioned about statistics so far of jihad, of how many airplanes they've destroyed, how many cars they've destroyed. And again, this shows the power of the Mujahideen, to let the people know. Again, he's inspiring the Mujahideen. And again, the next one he mentions is that the Mujahideen, they are in need of money, and it's for the Muslims, it's for their own benefit to sacrifice. And he would often say that jihad is not in need of men, but men are in need of jihad. Men are in need of the jihad. And the last thing he says is that, look, take this opportunity and come forward, okay, and participate, because you will not get another opportunity like this. So come forward, or journalists, come forward, engineers, come forward, electricians, come forward, doctors, come forward, surgeons, come forward, people who the scholars. So that was some of the main key points he said in his last lecture, given in Lahore just a few weeks before he was shaheed. Now the actual event of when he was shaheed. On the night of November 24th, which was Thursday night, Friday was November 24th, he had spent pretty much most of the night with Rabbani, and a lot of it with Hikmah Chair, discussing with them how to make peace between the two groups. Okay, because like I said, right, he was an instrumental point in bringing the Mujahideen together, and he had in fact made them sign a contract, ahad, a pledge, and it was his intention to announce this pledge in the Jumu'ah, in the Salat al-Jumu'ah, in his khutbah. So he spent most of the night doing this, okay, and then in the morning he got up, he got himself ready for after Fajr. Obviously, he went to sleep. He got up, he prayed Salat al-Duha. His children described him that he washed himself, put on new clothes. In fact, he wore new clothes that day. That he was wearing for the first time ever, okay. And he sat with his children for a little while, heard them recite some of the Quran. This is the Friday of November 24th. And then he with his two sons, Muhammad, whose age was 20, and Ibrahim, whose age was 15, they got into a car, and this car they had never ever driven before. This is the first time they were driving this car. Okay, and all these points are important, as you see, inshallah. Okay, and then they started to go, and as they were going through a street called Jamud, which is one of the main streets, they were turning to a small side road. A 20-kilogram bomb, and I think just before this, a little while, Sheikh Abdullah Azzam got off to walk beside the car, and just before this, a 20-kilogram bomb exploded, and the amount of TNT used here is the amount they used to kill, actually, to destroy tanks. This is the amount of TNT they used. It exploded, destroying, totally separating the bodies of his two sons, so much so that they found parts of their bodies 100 meters away. The body of Sheikh Abdullah Azzam, it itself was untouched. It was something. It seems that he was shaheed from the blast itself of the explosion. He wasn't himself torn away. His leg wasn't dismembered. He was dismembered. It seemed that he died from internal bleed, internal hemorrhage. The brothers themselves, at this time when they all came out of Jummah, because they were all waiting for the khutbah, they came out. They saw what had happened. They saw the sheikh. They immediately took him to the hospital. They got to the hospital, and there, is either on the way or at the hospital itself, he was shaheed. And so the life of one of the greatest heroes that's walked in the last century, definitely, he was shaheed, assassinated by the enemies of the Muslims. Immediately, the news is spread that night itself. They buried the Sheikh Abdullah Azzam in Pabi graveyard. The news itself is spread like like fire. It spread around the world. It caused a great upset at the time. He was at this time 58 years of age. If he had been alive today, he would have been roughly 72. And in fact, one day before this actually happened, because like I said to you, there was a tent before that. One of the brothers said to him, that should we not make for you some kind of a bulletproof vest, something, some type of protection for you? And the brother, he says that Sheikh Abdul Azzam, he stopped, he thought for a little while, he smiled and he said that I have no need for it. And then he quoted the verse, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم قل إن الموت الذي تفرون منه فإنه ملاقيكم. That say that verily the death that you are trying to flee from is verily going to reach you. That say the death that you are trying to run away from is going to reach you. I.e., that death, whenever it comes straight for me. Whenever it's straight for me, it's straight for me. So he said, no, I have no need for this. On that night itself, all the scholars, all the main people of the jihad of Afghanistan, they came, and the next 3 days, various people gave lectures. Some key points to be mentioned about this.